Bolivia's former president of nearly 14 years is claiming he was ousted by a coup. Evo Morales was accused of stealing the country's presidential election on October 20th, which would have been his fourth term in office. Weeks of protests against Morales ensued. After a report was released 3 weeks later by the Organization of American States saying it had found clear manipulation of the October 20th election, Bolivia's military and police withdrew their support of Morales, leading him to resign on November 10th. Was it a coup or not? The Post's South American and Caribbean bureau chief, Anthony Fayola, says that depends on your political view.
If you're on the right, what you see is a largely peaceful movement that forced out an authoritarian government that was trying to install itself through fraudulent elections. What they see is the restoration of democracy in Bolivia. However, if you're on the left, what you're seeing is an orchestrated effort to oust a man that they saw as a socialist icon in the country and in the region. Overall, the pro-democracy protests that we saw in Bolivia were peaceful. However, there were violent elements that emerged in the sense that we did see some homes of socialist leaders torched, and we saw at least the relative of one socialist politician kidnapped. Those were minority events that occurred in a majority situation where most people were peaceful on the streets, but nevertheless, it's those acts of violence that the socialists have pointed to as evidence why they feel there was a coup.
But because of Latin America's history of military governments that came to power by violent means and usurping elected leaders, the word coup is a loaded one.
That word is dividing the region and Bolivia right now. Regionally, the Mexicans, the Venezuelans, the Cuban government, for instance, have denounced what is happening as a coup. But right-wing governments, for instance, in Colombia, in Argentina, have refrained from using that.
Supporters of Morales protested his resignation. Some even attacked police stations. Even though Morales was stripped of power, he is not powerless.
We have to remember that Morales, despite being forced out, maintains a significant support base in Bolivia, probably in excess of 35 to 45% of the country.
While Morales' supporters protested, the former president fled Bolivia to accept Mexico's offer of political asylum. But Morales says he will return to Bolivia with more strength and energy. Bolivia doesn't have a clear leader. Janine Áñez, who was the second vice president of the Senate, declared herself the interim president on November 12th. However, there is resistance to her leadership from Morales' socialists, who control a majority in both the Bolivian Senate and House. The country is expected to hold new elections within 90 days. One of the outstanding questions for the country's next election is whether one of Morales' socialists will be allowed to run, given the electoral fraud that appeared to happen in the last one.
If they are barred from running, if the socialists are barred from running, I think you can pretty much guarantee that there'll be further unrest based on that decision.